Marlon Brando, one of Hollywood's most charismatic and feared actors. On set, he didn't follow the rules. Everyone fell silent around him. But that day, there was a child who broke the silence. In the 1950s, on a film set, a young extra began to cry. The director reacted harshly. The crew ignored it. But Marlon Brando stopped. He stopped filming. He said just a few words and silenced everyone on the set. After that moment, nothing was ever the same. A child was protected. A legend revealed himself. The date was June 12, 1954. The location was a large, shadowy film lot in Los Angeles. The sun had just risen, and the set lights had not yet fully taken over the scene. The lot was buzzing with preparation. Cameras were being set up for test shots. Extras were taking their places, and the costume team was putting the finishing touches on the wardrobe. Everyone on the lot was working in an organized rhythm. Rules were strict and discipline was indispensable. But that day, on this lot, an event was about to push the limits of that discipline. When Marlon Brando arrived on set, he radiated a quiet authority. He was not just an actor. Brando was a force that defined Hollywood's rules, someone whose presence could stop even a director in his tracks. Everyone knew that if Brando felt uneasy on set, even the director would step back. But that morning, Brando surveyed the set with a determination and focus beyond the usual, observing everyone's routine movements. Cameras, lights, set arrangements, everything was in place. The scene was a dramatic hospital sequence. Death, loss, helplessness. The scene revolved around these themes, testing the emotional intensity of the actors. Among the extras were several children. They were not professional actors, but real children brought from an orphanage. They were meant to serve only as background decoration for the scene. The first takes were completed. The set was in its usual controlled chaos. Lighting technicians adjusted shadows. Cameras rehearsed scenes repeatedly. Actors delivered their lines with quiet focus, and the extras positioned themselves in the background almost invisibly. The second take went smoothly. The director was satisfied, the producers relieved. Everything was proceeding as planned. But during the third take, a muffled, fragile sound came from the back of the set. At first, no one noticed. In Hollywood, children crying on set was common. Extras were small, silent, and blended into the background. Most of the time, they were seen only as part of the scene. "We'll handle it later," would be said. It would be brushed off. But this sound was different. It wasn't just a hiccup. It was an audible expression of fear, helplessness, and confusion. Marlon Brando was fully immersed in his character. His eyes on the lines, his face shaped by the emotions of the role. But that sound, it captured his full attention. At first, he felt a slight discomfort. Perhaps he thought the extra had made a small mistake. But then he realized this was not part of the scene. It was a real expression of pain. For the crew, the young extra was just a background element. He had no lines, no effect on the scene. But for Brando, this child was more than just an extra in the background. He was a living symbol of vulnerability, innocence, and genuine fear, standing beyond all the discipline and professionalism of the set. Every tremble, every hiccup resonated in Brando's mind. The noise of the set, the clicking of the cameras, the hum of the lights, all faded into the background. Brando's eyes locked onto the little child. At that moment, neither camera, nor scene, nor lines mattered. The tears sliding from the child's eyes captured Brando's entire focus and empathy. For everyone else, it was just an extra crying. But for Brando, this moment carried the full weight of being human and feeling responsibility. Brando advanced with heavy steps. Each step seemed to spread a silence that cut through the noise of the set. Moving among the people behind the lights and cameras, he never took his eyes off the little child. Everyone on the set was watching him. When Brando made a decision on a scene, no one could oppose him. But this time, his determination wasn't just about his performance. It was about the safety and emotional world of a small child. The little boy, about 7 years old, had his knees pulled up to his chest, his hands covering his face. He was crying silently but uncontrollably, trembling. His sobs were intermittent, muffled, and fragile. They conveyed such intense pain that even amid the bustling atmosphere of the set, they drew attention. The other extras were simply acting. The camera treated them as part of the scenery. But this child was not merely an element of the scene. In Brando's eyes, he was the embodiment of real fear and anxiety. A crew member approached the child, placing a hand gently on his shoulder, trying to soothe him. "Come on, calm down," he said, his voice slightly trembling but full of attempt. The boy sobbed more, tears streaming down his face. At that moment, Brando's voice changed the entire atmosphere on set. "Don't touch him." His voice was not loud. He was not shouting, but every word resonated like a command. The set immediately fell silent. The actors and crew were stunned. The director looked at Brando with a mixture of anger and frustration on his face. The director tried to object, his voice a mix of authority and panic. "Marlon, wait a second." But Brando, without taking his eyes off the child, repeated firmly, this time with cutting decisiveness, "I said stop." The lights remained on. The cameras were rolling, but the set was completely silent. Everyone was holding their breath. Actors and extras looked on, unsure of what to do, while the crew silently followed Brando's movements. In that moment, a scene had paused. The cameras were recording, but every emotion, every tremble, every sob in real time was alive and genuine. Brando walked toward the child with measured, deliberate steps, calm but resolute. Finally, he knelt down, bringing himself to the child's eye level. This was not just a physical approach. It was a signal of trust, understanding, and protection established through eye contact. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice soft but filled with curiosity and compassion. The child did not lift his head. He didn't answer. He continued to sob. Brando understood the child's emotional state. The scene, the film set, none of it mattered anymore. This moment was solely about humanity and empathy. A crew member standing nearby whispered, barely audible, "His mother passed away recently." This scene affected him deeply. Being on set, it broke him. Brando's expression changed. Normally, he was impressive, composed, and somewhat intimidating in front of the camera. But in that moment, away from spectators and cameras, the completely human Brando emerged. He stood beside the child in silence, with eye contact, slow breathing, and slightly trembling hands. Now, the scene, the lines, and the cameras were merely backdrop. The reality came from the child's eyes and his sobs. Brando nodded slightly. In that moment, the crowd on the set, the brightness of the lights, and the mechanical hum of the cameras seemed to fade away. His expression had changed. He was no longer on set as an actor, but fully present in his human dimension. This was the real Brando, the one seen when the cameras were off. Compassionate, merciful, human first, and capable of direct empathy. His gaze not only addressed the little child, but also sent a silent warning through the set's atmosphere. Everyone realized that Brando sensed something was wrong and would not hesitate to intervene. "This child does not have to be here," Brando said, his voice calm but resonant with certainty. His words paused the chaotic rhythm of the set, focusing all attention on the boy. "No one has to witness this scene." The director took a deep breath, his face a mixture of anger, shock, and concern. "But the schedule is running late. Hours, money, planned scenes," he tried to object. His voice trembled because standing under Brando's gaze had become far more difficult than usual. At that moment, the director realized that this was not a dispute that could disrupt the set's discipline. The issue was the child's safety and emotional integrity. Brando stood up with heavy, deliberate steps. Every movement was measured and decisive. His voice was calm but firm. "Then the schedule will be delayed. But this scene will not be shot today." These words conveyed authority, not only to the director but to the entire set. Silence hung over the lot like a dense cloud for several seconds. Producers clenched their fists in frustration, lips pressed tight, but no one dared oppose Brando. Because everyone knew that if Marlon Brando made a decision, it was irreversible. In everyone's mind on the set, scene plans, shooting schedules, budgets, all became suddenly irrelevant. The importance of cameras and lights diminished. All attention shifted to the child and Brando's resolve. The little extra, still hugging his knees, trembling but secure, looked at Brando. Brando's silent yet powerful presence acted like a protector, easing the boy's sobs. Brando slowly sat down beside him. Under the warm yet sharp glare of the lights, the little boy's sobs were still audible. Brando leaned slightly forward, speaking without taking his eyes off the child. His voice was soft, yet firm with resolve. "When I was little, adults told me not to cry," he said, his voice carrying the weight of a memory from the past. "But sometimes it takes courage to cry. And you today, you showed that courage." The words resonated like an echo over the boy. The little extra first looked at Brando with surprise. Then for the first time, trust and admiration appeared in his eyes. From his trembling lips came a quiet voice. "I don't want to cry, but I can't stop." Brando nodded slightly, smiled, and continued in a gentle tone. "Sometimes you don't have to stop. Showing your feelings, admitting that you're scared, is part of being brave. Crying doesn't mean denying your fear, it's facing it. Today, you did that, and that might be the greatest courage you can have." For a brief moment, the set was so silent that the only sounds besides the faint hum of the lights and the mechanical buzzing of the cameras were the child's breaths. The actors exchanged glances, a mix of admiration and astonishment in their eyes. The camera crew watched silently but intently. Marlon Brando was not performing on set. He was fully human. Brando slowly stepped back, yet his eyes remained on the child. "Today, your safety comes first," he said. "No one can take that from you. Your fears, your feelings, your crying. These are rights no one can interfere with." The child's trembling shoulders began to relax gradually with Brando's words. His small hands moved slightly away from his knees, and for the first time, he could take a deep breath. The tension in his face slowly gave way to relief. Brando stood up and walked slowly past the cameras toward the back of the set, but he left one final word. "Sometimes, the greatest role isn't on stage, it's being human." These words reached not only the child, but everyone on the set like a lesson. From the lighting technicians behind the cameras to the makeup artists, everyone realized that true strength and courage do not lie in on-screen performances, but in showing compassion and protecting empathy. Even after Brando left the boy's side, the little child's sobs had quieted, and for the first time, his eyes reflected a sense of safety and calm. Brando stood in the shadow of the cameras, his gaze carrying the child's trust and vulnerability. That moment was etched in everyone's heart on the set. A film may have been shooting, but the real scene was about humanity. Producers and crew remained silent in the face of Brando's resolve. No one spoke a word. Brando's stance showed both the child and the set who was truly strong and who could uphold human values. The child's safety and emotional comfort were more important than the entire scene. Brando was making history not just as an actor, but as a human being. The other actors, extras, and technical crew watched in silent admiration, tinged with a slight awe. No one spoke. Words were unnecessary in that moment. Everyone knew that when Brando made a decision, there was no turning back. The silence had become an expression of safety and compassion. That day, the set was immersed in silence. When the shoot was canceled, under the soft yet sharp glare of the lights, even the mechanical hum of the cameras faded into the background. The little boy was safely escorted off the set, while Brando stepped back with heavy, deliberate steps, his eyes still fixed on the child, his expression resolute and protective. Producers whispered nervously, the director stared in shock, other actors and crew watched curiously. All eyes were locked on Brando's resolve. No one could object. When Marlon Brando made up his mind, there was no turning back. Shooting schedules, calendars, millions of dollars in production equipment. None of it mattered to Brando at that moment. What was real was the fear and vulnerability of a child. And in a Hollywood world filled with harsh realities, Brando chose to stop just to protect the tears of a child. The crowd on set gradually dispersed. Lights dimmed, cameras stopped. The artificial life of the scene came to an end. But for Brando, the matter was not over. After the chaos, he withdrew to a corner, alone in a quiet room, his eyes fixed on the ceiling, hands lightly clasped together. He took a deep breath, leaning back slowly. Thoughts began to envelop his mind. The roles he had played, the praise he had earned, the awards he had received, all seemed meaningless in comparison. The true measure of that moment lay in a child's safety and the decision made in the name of humanity. Murmuring to himself quietly, he said, "This is beyond a scene. Making a difference in a child's life, that is real success." Beyond cameras and production, he found his own value as a human in this decision. Later, it was said that he told those close to him about the event. "I've played many bad roles in my life. Sometimes I lost myself on stage, I lost my emotions. But the day I didn't silence a child, that was the day I made peace with myself." Brando's resolve represented not only that moment on set, but also a stance that would be talked about in Hollywood history for a long time. That day, everyone on set witnessed a legend, but the true heroism was shaped in the silent corner, standing beside a child. Brando had made a choice not for awards, fame, or schedule pressures, but for humanity and empathy. Hours later, as the production team gathered themselves, Brando remained silent. From the outside, it may have seemed like he had simply ensured the safety of a child. But from the inside, this act represented a rare pause in Hollywood's harsh, ruthless, and fast-paced world. And that moment stayed in the minds and hearts of everyone on set.